Awesome. Well, thank you, Kent, for joining me and us again. Looks like we're just going to kind of make this a monthly thing now because
I'm
you and
totally
I
okay
have,
with it.
huh?
I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah, you and I have lots to talk about, and I think it makes sense to keep having those conversations out loud. Um, because I'm constantly coming to you about things because you're on the education side and you help me understand things in ways that I don't always see just being on the professional side. And you've told me that it goes the same, the opposite way too. So it's just beneficial, I think, for us to have these kinds of conversations out loud and see if other people can listen in and participate. So the focus that we're on today, that we're talking about, is kind of what's the point of all this change. And all this change is referring to the things that are happening in our profession. There's been a degree change, there has been changes in the education standards. As athletic trainers, we're being told to further embrace this idea of being healthcare professionals. We're really moving away from just the athletics model. There's a lot going on for us. And I think some of us maybe struggle with understanding, even if we want to embrace it, there's like a why behind it, right? That you and I talk about a lot of times. And so I think it's important for you to share a little bit of like maybe some behind the scenes of the education side of it, but really for us to just have a larger conversation of like, where were the areas that maybe we were insufficient and are hopefully going to be accommodated, but also like what were the areas that we excel at and that we think maybe we're going to get even stronger in the healthcare professions,
Right.
that we as athletic trainers uniquely bring kind of to the table.
Right. I think that last point you made there about what are our strengths,
Yeah.
I think that, you know, traditionally athletic trainers, we've been called the jack of all trades, or I know you've used the analogy of the Swiss Army knife. And I think that that skill set, the ability to switch, the ability to be adaptable, the ability to be all things to all people
Hmm.
is is a strength of our profession and a strength of our culture. And I think that that's going to continue, but it will probably look different in the future. I think in the beginning, right, we were all things to all people out of necessity,
Yes, right.
right? Like
And I
we
think
were
we talked about that a little bit on the last one, where it was
right.
like we just kept saying yes to everything because we didn't have as much of an identity. We weren't really
Right.
sure what a yes or a no was supposed to be.
Right. And I think we can fill, I won't say the same role, but I'll say we can bring the same skill set to
Mhm.
healthcare,
Mhm.
because healthcare is laden with specialists, and
Ah,
everyone's in their rut or in their tunnel, right?
yeah.
You can have a cardio-nephrologist who
Yeah.
studies the effects of the cardiovascular system on the kidneys,
Sure.
and she is really brilliant at that area, but how that relates to physical activity, or how that relates to maybe some of the mental health challenges that the patient may be having, or how that relates to the nutritional concerns, that's where we as athletic trainers can use that skill set of being all things to all people, being
Mhm.
adaptable, being able to adapt, improvise, and overcome,
Mhm.
right? Being able to use that as we transition into that role,
Mhm.
because I think there's a void in healthcare,
Hmm.
and that's a potential opportunity for, as we transition and we start to kind of build our niche in healthcare, our niche could be to be the integrator.
I love that you said that, because I think the idea of being a Swiss Army knife or the jack of all trades or all things to all people gets a really bad rap. And I think even within our profession, there is a, I love that you said that, because I think the idea of being a Swiss Army knife or the jack of all trades or all things to all people gets a really bad rap. And I think even within our profession, there is a battle, or maybe like a dichotomy between, do I go deep or do I go wide? Right. So we've seen an emergence of like clinical specialties, and we know that, with residencies and things that are going to be coming down the road, that really is where the emphasis is to develop a deep clinical proficiency in a very specialized area. But yet, with what we're doing in the education side, we're adding an increased number of proficiencies, so that we are able to adapt in a greater number of situations and be more things to more people. So I'm interested your thoughts on kind of like the one verse, not versus the other, but like how you balance the two of those as a single profession.
Right. So I'd like us to imagine, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's do big picture imagination,
Okay.
vision 2050 for athletic trainers.
Yeah.
Right? How awesome would it be to have a multi-level care facility
Mm.
staffed with specialty, like subspecialty athletic trainers, specialty athletic trainers, primary care athletic trainers,
Mhm.
and then advanced practice leader athletic trainers.
Yeah.
So let's we'll stick with the college university setting, right?
Sure.
Where you could have a staff of 10 to 15 to 20 athletic trainers, and they're all treating the same, like their patient population is the same patient, is the
Yep.
patient population,
Yep.
regardless of what sports you play.
Hmm.
Let's say you have a patient comes in, they see the primary care athletic trainer, the first line
Hmm.
athletic trainer.
Hmm.
That athletic trainer determines that this patient needs specialty care by the neurotrauma athletic
Yeah.
trainer,
Yeah.
and then they, through some of their care, the neurotrauma specialty athletic trainer says maybe we need to have go see a subspecialty athletic trainer,
Uh-huh.
right? And then we have advanced practice leaders,
Yeah.
right? Clinical scholars, people with DAT degrees that are serving as the healthcare organization managers
Right.
and leaders trying to coordinate the whole system.
Hmm.
And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah,
And
that's a cool idea. Uh-huh.
like that would be really cool. And one of the first time when I say this, some of the pushback I get is, well, can't that's not realistic for the athletic trainer, right? Like for the everyday athletic trainer, it may work for college universities, maybe professional sports, but
Hmm.
for the secondary school athletic trainers, that doesn't work because we're all out on an island on our own. And again, if we're thinking big picture,
Hmm.
let's move ourselves out of the school district we work for
Yeah.
and move us into a network of providers.
Yeah.
Just like a physician A would refer to physician B, they may be part of two different practices, but
Yes.
because someone has a specialty or sees patients of a certain type or has more experience in that,
Mhm.
there's free referral
Yeah.
between or among the different athletic trainers. So imagine if you were in a secondary school setting and maybe your school had two or three athletic trainers and the other schools in the conference had one athletic trainer.
Yeah.
But within the conference, you have some athletic trainers who are advanced practice leaders,
Yeah.
some who are specialty athletic trainers, some are general practice athletic trainers, and some are subspecialty athletic trainers, and you create a referral network within.
Yeah.
Now, that gets to the care part, and it requires us to leave the the it keeps the team part, but it requires us to remove the competition
Yes.
piece of where we currently are in
Right.
athletic training and the way we're hired.
Well, and so that's what I was going to bring up, right? So when I was at Joint Committee a couple weeks ago, they were talking about and introducing the idea of residencies. And essentially, it basically said that anywhere between 2 and 10% of the greater athletic training population is probably going to pursue a residency.
Mhm.
So even though there's a lot of development going into this, and it is going to be a deep, heavy clinical specialty, a very small percentage of athletic trainers are actually going to be doing it. So it's not like we're completely transforming ourselves and everybody is now going to go into basically a postdoc residency program and become these clinical specialists. It's really going to be reserved for few people who see that for themselves, either as a career or have that desire just in how they want to practice. And it made me think that we need to get away from this idea of like a DAT person is more valued than someone with just a, not just,
Not
than
just
someone who has a bachelor's degree, or that the athletic trainer who works in the NFL is a more valuable athletic trainer than the one who works at secondary school. And I've actually made this argument in some of the presentations I've given that the secondary school athletic trainer, when you simply look at value, is actually the most valuable athletic trainer, the most valuable position within athletic training, because they are a single healthcare provider amongst a population that is one of the largest, right? So when you actually look at value in terms of what they're able to provide, as opposed to other people who work in either a clinical setting or they have a team of athletic trainers, they're not as valuable because more people could do that same job. So I think that if we're going to be working on accepting this change and understanding the overall impact that it's going to have to us professionally, it requires us to shed, I would say, those limiting beliefs about ourselves, in that one person, because their degree may say something different, or because their clinical practice might look different, or because just generally speaking, the setting that they work in has more of a spotlight on it, that I have to believe for myself as an athletic trainer that they're not any more valuable than I am.
absolutely. I think that's, again, like you said, that's one of our limiting beliefs in which we've attached value to degrees that people have, or the practice settings in which they work in.
Right.
And I think that's one of the ways we are fundamentally going to have to change. We have to
Uh-huh.
find new ways to measure our value. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the default was to measure people by degrees or
Yeah.
measure people by practice setting,
Mm-hmm.
because we collectively haven't agreed upon, or there hasn't been a concerted effort to say, how do we measure the value and the quality of care that all of us provide, right?
Mm-hmm.
As individuals, as care teams, and I think the other piece that we're missing is we like to. I think one of the dangers of categorizing people by degree or categorizing people based on their practice setting is overgeneralization,
Mm.
right? All like so in this future, everyone will have a role, and
Right.
it's not to say, and the degree, and from an education perspective, degree paths will help prepare you for that role,
Yeah.
to obtain that role,
Yeah.
right? Not saying that that's the only path to that role,
Right. Yeah.
right? So
Right.
right, but currently right now, let's look at the path to the path to being a head athletic trainer or director of sports medicine.
Sure.
The path is through experience.
Yeah.
That's the only path,
Mm-hmm.
really, right?
Right.
Like that's the only path that exists.
Yeah.
And experience is, and that, I think that experience was chosen by default,
Sure.
right? Maybe not based on skill set, or maybe skill
Mm-hmm.
set that's been acquired over time.
Mm-hmm.
What if we are able to develop that skill set so individuals may be able to more rapidly
Mm-hmm.
move into positions like that with organizational psychology or organizational leadership
Yeah.
understanding,
Yeah.
right? That's a very different skill set than someone who wants to specialize in neurotrauma,
Right.
right? And we absolutely need those individuals to specialize in neurotrauma.
Yeah.
And we absolutely need highly qualified general practitioners. I think
Yes.
that we cannot forget the general practitioner, because that's still going to be the bread and butter and the face of athletic training. And
Yeah. if we
Yeah.
think about physicians, I think that this is a very similar situation that, from what I understand, they have ended up in. Like, there are not enough GPs, there's not enough family physicians, there's a ton of specialists, and but the people who can just get you in and see the
Mhm.
cough, or the things that the place you go for your annual physical and things like that, those doctors have become increasingly difficult to get into, and to have ongoing relationships with, partially, I'm sure, because of the same thing that athletic training has dealt with, where everybody wants to become a specialist so that they have what they feel like is a role in all of this, right? Like, they're not just the first line of defense, or it's like being a GP wasn't enough anymore. Now you had to go above and beyond to do all of these other things.
Yeah, I think that we don't want to create a system in which the we'll call them GP, primary care athletic trainers, or
Right.
general practice athletic trainers. What we
Mhm.
don't want to do is create a system in which those frontline athletic trainers become essentially just referral mills to
Yes.
other providers or to specialty athletic trainers. I
Mhm.
think that that's part of the educational transition,
Mm.
is to elevate the and the word elevates thrown around quite a bit. So
Sure.
I don't love that word, but
Yeah.
really to enhance. Yeah, I think that we don't want to create a system in which the we'll call them GP, primary care athletic trainers, or
Right.
general practice athletic trainers. What we
Mhm.
don't want to do is create a system in which those frontline athletic trainers become essentially just referral mills to
Yes.
other providers or to specialty athletic trainers. I
Mhm.
think that that's part of the educational transition,
Mm.
is to elevate the and the word elevates thrown around quite a bit. So
Sure.
I don't love that word, but
Yeah.
really to enhance the sophistication
Okay.
of the care our the mass of athletic trainers,
Right.
right, provide. So allows them to still be that Swiss Army knife,
Yeah.
or to still be that jack of all trades, but the jack of all trades in healthcare,
Yeah.
not the jack of all trades of coaching, healthcare, strength and conditioning,
Yeah.
disciplinarian, right?
Right.
Like,
Right. And so what do you feel like is why is that valuable? Like, when you look at the overall healthcare market, or science in general, like, why do we belong there? Why is it that, like, we can provide that is missing?
well, I think that we can provide that just based on what you said earlier, right? Where there's a lack of general practice physicians,
Hmm.
and as we transition into whatever healthcare is going to look like in 30 years,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It will not. I don't know what it will look like, but it will
Yeah.
not look like it looks today,
Correct.
right?
Right.
30
Right.
years from now, healthcare is going to look vastly different. And if we are prepared
Hmm.
to essentially be the primary care healthcare provider for
Hmm.
those engaging in physical activity, which
Right.
means we can see them when they come in the door. We can do a rapid stress test on them. We
Hmm.
can we can check for other infectious diseases.
Hmm.
We can do a neurological exam
Yep.
well to identify red flags. We're able to do our strengths are related to musculoskeletal health,
Yep.
but we have to look at it not as, we're not musculoskeletal health experts. We are experts in the medicine of the physically active, right?
Mm.
So, right, I think we like to gravitate towards musculoskeletal health.
Yeah.
We
Right.
like
It's
to
where
do
we feel
that,
comfortable.
right? And that's because that's really where we're based in physical education. We're
Sure.
born out of strength and conditioning. A lot of the conditions that we see are
Hmm.
in fact musculoskeletal based.
Sure.
However, what we're noticing and what we're seeing, and you can open up the latest Journal of Athletic Training or NATA News, we're on the front line of the mental health crisis
Hmm.
in the United States. We
Yep.
need to be trained at least in identifying that. We're on in the secondary schools, at least here in the Midwest, athletic trainers on the front line of the opioid epidemic,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So, so we have to be prepared for that, right? We have to be advocating for Narcan in our kits. We have to be
Mm,
advocating, because what happens when the school nurse leaves? There's no
right.
Narcan on campus,
Yeah.
right? And then then how many of our patients come in that have the sniffles, or maybe they come in with some digestive issues,
Hmm.
or they come in with some whatever, some skin issue, like we see skin issues,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Wrestling season, right?
Hmm.
We feel relatively comfortable with that. But
Yep.
if we become the primary provider for the physically active, we
Hmm.
have to be able to look over all of the systems
Yeah.
and at least be able to recognize the red flags, right?
Right.
If it requires referral, we need to refer, but
Sure.
we also need to have the skill set and the mindset that we can manage some of these or many of these conditions
Mm-hmm.
in-house. And it doesn't require us to simply screen and refer.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? So I just got really blown out on this lighting. I think that when we look at the changes from an education standpoint, when we start to identify the emphasis of ourselves as healthcare professionals, that this is what we've been doing all along, right? So these changes aren't necessarily, with the exception of, starting a line or a few other things, they're really not changing who we are as professionals. It is, to your point, kind of emphasizing some areas over others, maybe, especially those that put us more in alignment with other healthcare providers. And we're shedding some of the other qualities that we used to have, whether that was, in the coaching realm or the strength and conditioning realm. But really, we're just leaning more into who we've been this entire time, but really maybe kind of putting an exclamation point on it, or really
Mm.
um, focusing in on what that actually looks like on a day-to-day basis, and how to develop it in a way that is um, I guess just kind of like more ingrained, of like, it's less of how many different hats can I put on in terms of like other sectors, and it's more of like, how do I really put myself in the healthcare frame of mind and be able to address or treat anything that could walk through the door. Not the coach that could walk through the door, and not those kinds of, but like, for my patient, what can walk through the door.
Absolutely. Like that's exactly it. We are refining
Hmm.
what we're doing in patient care, right? I think athletic
Yeah.
trainers deliver, and I may be biased. I think we're both biased towards athletic trainers, but I
Sure.
think by and large, athletic trainers deliver excellent care, and we
Hmm.
see that on a regular basis by people who are willing to speak for us. We see the impact and the influence we have on young people's and not so young people's lives,
Yeah.
right? So we are providing good care or adequate care for now,
Hmm.
right? Now, the next step is to refine that. And like you said, put an explanation point and elevate our mindset to that of, I am a healthcare provider, period.
Right.
And I am an athletic trainer and I'm a healthcare provider, period. It's
Yeah.
not, I'm an athletic trainer and I'm like a physical therapist, a nurse, an EMT,
Yeah.
right? It's we it, and again, substituting other professions for trying to describe what we do seems like an inconsequential thing.
Mm.
However, I believe it has powerful implications for how we view ourselves,
Mm.
because we're, again, I think unconsciously we're comparing ourselves. We're like all of these people, but we never say we're better than a physical therapist, or better than a nurse, and we're better than
Yeah.
a physician. We
Right.
always want to, we're like these people, but we're not
Yeah.
quite them.
Yeah.
um, and I think that we have the opportunity to serve a completely different role than our other healthcare brothers and sisters.
As you're talking, what's coming to mind is, to me, the importance of having conversations with other professionals, because one of the reasons why, and okay, so this is just like a human behavior, right? So we surround ourselves with like-minded people, and so when we're talking with them, we don't think that the way we think or the way that we talk is different than what everybody else does. But then you go and you talk to somebody else outside of your circle, and they're like, wow, that's a really unique way of thinking about that, or that's like a really interesting approach to that problem. And you're thinking, well, not really, like that's just how your brain works, right? And this happens all the time. But if we made more of a point of talking to other healthcare professionals, I think we would recognize how unique the way in which we practice is, and potentially we could value our patient care better, or we would be able to identify the fact that our Swiss Army knife is very valuable, that the fact that we could pull out any number of tools at any given time is something that almost any other healthcare practitioner can't say they can do. So instead of beating ourselves up, devaluing what it is that we can do, we start to focus more on those as special traits that we can bring and deliver to not only our patient population, but the overall healthcare market.
Right. And I want to extend that analogy a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say that our strength are not the doohickeys at the end of the Swiss Army knife. Like,
Mm.
we're not, it's not the blade, it's not the microscope, it's not the file.
Yeah.
Our strength is the actual mechanism by which those things fold in and out. Right? So
Oh,
that is the skill set, the ability to switch and change and look at a problem from a different perspective and create a solution.
right.
Right? And so when we look at refining ourselves as a profession and raising the sophistication of care, we're
Yeah.
not changing the core of who we are. Right? I think a lot of people say we're going to change who we are as athletic trainers. Absolutely not. Our
Yeah.
core, the mechanism by which the doohickeys on the Swiss Army knife move back and forth, will remain. What will
That's
be
really good.
different is
Yeah.
we're going to switch out that Phillips head screwdriver
Yeah.
for a flathead screwdriver or
Right.
whatever that is.
Right. We're going to put a
Right?
corkscrew on there or whatever.
Right. And we're going to get better at saying, okay, this doohickey does not serve us in the mission that we have.
Right.
So we're going to take this other information, interchange it, and I think that's where our core is as a
Mm.
profession. I think that's a strength that I think intrinsically all of us know, but it's really hard to put into words,
Mm. Mhm.
because it's not a soft skill. It's not really a tangible skill.
Yeah.
So it falls in this like adaptability. It's more than adaptability,
Right.
right? And it's more than improvisation, but it's a mix of all of those things,
Sure.
that allow us to do these things that, because of how we develop as a profession compared to how other healthcare professions develop as a
Mhm.
profession,
Mhm.
there's they if they had that skill set has been lost,
Hmm.
right? And
Okay.
now there's a need for that. So when we talk about interprofessional practice,
Yeah.
that's one of the new not, it's an elevated explanation point with the
Yeah.
National Academy of Medicine competencies, right? We have a huge opportunity to embrace that,
Yeah.
um, and live and be okay with that.
And really, being on the business side of things, that's where there is so much opportunity. And I coach other people wanting to start businesses, and I'm always so amazed at some of the unique spaces they come to me with. I met with a lady who, she wants to be a women's health athletic trainer, focusing on the postpartum, the postnatal woman. And I'm talking to her, and I'm like, so how do you feel like you differentiate from the physical therapist who focuses in that area? and she's just, talking in all the ways that we do so well about like, it's not just about return to activities of daily life, which is really what physical therapy and that rehabilitative aspect is focused on. This is the active woman who wants to get back to running the marathons and doing the CrossFit, but is still wetting herself when she runs because that was never addressed. If she can hold it and get to the toilet, then that's enough, and she graduates physical therapy. So and I'm listening to it, I'm just lit up, like, that is so cool. Like, I've never heard of like an athletic trainer working in that capacity. And I have a bunch of examples about that. But it's funny because when you were talking earlier about we want to be in the musculoskeletal area, so much of what I do in my coaching is helping some of the athletic trainers unlearn those behaviors of like, but how do I find an ortho that's going to sign off on this? I'm like, you don't. You get a gyno that's going to sign off on it, right? Like, and so there's so much of this default thinking of the ways we were taught, or maybe even just the places that we're comfortable being. And as we open ourselves up, or we transition into other areas and really identifying patient populations outside of just athletics and traditional physical education or physical exercise, there's opportunity for us to be interprofessional with so many different healthcare providers. I worked with another gentleman that's really focused on like neurotrauma and people who've been in car accidents, who have had strokes, and again, like they graduate occupational therapy or maybe even physical therapy, but they can't still go run a marathon. They can't work out. They can't do box jumps. There's this whole other gap. And it, again, talking to him, it's like, no, you don't go find an ortho. You go find someone who specializes in brain trauma and neurosurgery. And like, that's
Right.
the physician who's going to sign off on your standing orders, because you want people who align with like, your practice and your mission. And I think that's where, again, from the business side of it, like there's so much opportunity, and it's so exciting to see like the different directions that athletic trainers are going in, because it allows us to expose ourselves to different patient populations. But then we're working with other healthcare providers that like probably otherwise had no idea we existed, or didn't think that our skill set would apply in a patient population that they're more familiar with.
Right. And like it also allows, we talk about interprofessional practice, but it allows for intra-professional practice
Yes.
more than what we have now. Right. And I think, the example of the athletic trainer you were speaking about, who's a women's health athletic trainer.
Yeah.
When our colleagues or our friends in athletic training say they want to do something that's outside the box, we have to support them.
Yes.
Even though it may not be for us,
right.
we cannot fall into the temptation to move into like the crab mentality and start to try to pull them down because they want to do something different. And just because it looks different from you doesn't mean that it's wrong. I'm so excited that athletic trainer wants to do that, and it is doing that. Right? I think I saw her on Twitter. She's calling herself a women's health athletic trainer now, and that's so awesome, because now, guess what? If that athletic trainer works in my area, and I work for a college, university, or a secondary school, and I need specialty care, and I want to talk to a professional who understands what I do, who understands my skill set. How many times have we talked to other providers that say, well, we just say, we don't know, they don't know what they think we're a coach or a strength and conditioning coach, right? Now I can have a conversation with a peer who's able to provide high level care for what women's health issues, and then provide seamless transition back to the care of the primary care athletic trainer.
Right.
But that's so cool. And then, because if we just, if I had $1 for every time I heard an athletic trainer say, people just don't understand what we do, it's hard to have professional conversations with other providers, I mean, I'd be a multi-millionaire. Right? Like maybe a 10-time millionaire. Right? But how cool would that be if we network of other, just again, like physicians.
Hmm.
Physicians talk to physicians,
Right.
right? It doesn't have to be athletic. It can be athletic
Hmm.
trainers talking to nurses or to physical therapists or to physicians or to
Yeah.
occupational therapists. But it also can be athletic trainers referring to other athletic trainers,
Hmm.
referring back to the original athletic trainer, and
Hmm.
having intra-professional collaborations
Right.
to increase the health and quality of life of the physically active patients that we work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so to go back to your idea of uh, just this feeling of like representation matters, right? And that's why, in my opinion, it's so important that we have people who look like us in leadership, or there's examples out there for us to be able to do the thing that we want to do. And when I started business, I felt a lot of shame, and it was partially self-imposed, but a lot of it was externally applied because I wasn't practicing in ways that other people deemed acceptable. And so one of the things that I've really tried to focus on in using my platform is to give people permission to practice how they want, to show up in the ways that set their heart on fire. Because I think that we run the risk of losing people from the profession. And in I would say that that has been the result of the shaming, the lack of acceptance, and just I think probably to an extent the lack of representation too. People don't think that they can continue to practice athletic training in ways that fit their lifestyle as their life changes, whether that's becoming a mother or getting older or whatever it is. Um, and so not only is there that part of it, but yes, I also think that if we truly are going to work towards the model that you described for 2050, this is how we start. You know, we need the people that are going into the areas that speak to them, and then we bring them back into the profession. We make sure that they know that you're still welcome. We still accept you as an athletic trainer, even though you're not practicing in ways that have historically looked the way that we think athletic trainer and athletic training practice looks. Um, and I think that conversations like this, and you know, her being on Twitter, and it's really important that we can cultivate that as a mentality so that we are able to give those people permission to practice in those ways while remaining within the profession.
Yeah, like what if, right? Um, what if we're in the middle of an athletic training renaissance, right? Like in 2050, people are going to be talking about this young woman who is a women's health athletic trainer,
Mhm.
as they were the reason that they had the courage to pursue this, right?
Totally.
And I think that that's for all of the practicing athletic trainers who get the opportunity to watch this,
Yeah.
or all of the students or the young professionals or experienced professionals, or doesn't matter where you are in the continuum,
Right.
we have the opportunity to chart a new course for ourselves,
Yeah.
and in a period of time in which we transition, we with transition comes tremendous amounts of opportunity,
Mhm.
and we have to be courageous and vulnerable as we move into those, and so we can create our own future, because as we change, we have to change the workplace. If
Right.
we continue to let the workplace control us, right, then we're going to be highly skilled healthcare providers working in an antiquated system,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and part of that transition requires some of us to be trailblazers or wayfinders
Mhm.
or people who challenge the status quo, and that may not be for everyone,
Right.
but for those who want to accept that burden, or that they feel it, that's what sets them on fire, like
Mhm.
challenging the status quo is their why. Right?
Mhm.
We have to be in a place to support them, or empowering other people to find their own voice. We
Yeah.
have to support those individuals in our profession. We're not like those individuals are not heretics. They
Right.
simply see a different future than what we see.
Yes.
And there's a place for all of us in that future.
Yeah.
And there's a place to retain more of us and have us feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves
Yeah.
if we have the courage to start to develop that now.
Yeah. And I think if we are going through a renaissance and there is all of this opportunity in front of us, we owe it to ourselves to link arms and to become, in lockstep with each other. And for those who are further out in front, to reach the hand back, and for those who are further behind, to reach the hand forward.
Mhm.
That it's not about one excelling and the other being left behind. It really is about collectively all of us coming together and seeing the opportunity that is available, both for us as individuals in how we practice or where we practice or why we practice, as well as the profession at large. Um, yeah, and is that the point of all this? I mean, we apply meaning, right? So we can
Right,
decide what it is, but
right. Yes, but we're just, this is such an exciting time.
yeah, it really is.
Like, and excitement can be scary,
Yeah.
right?
And,
It
and,
can
and
be
it should be
scary,
managed. It should be
right?
controlled too. It can't just be, chaotic excitement.
Right. But with the energy, there are real opportunities for us if we stop thinking about the next 5 years and start thinking about the next 50 years or the
Mm,
next 30 years and
mhm.
where we want to be and
Right.
where it may not be you or I or the other professionals who are our age,
Yep.
right? It could be those individuals who are in fifth grade now,
Yeah. I was gonna say middle
right?
school. Yeah.
Or middle school, right?
Yeah.
They could be the ones that will realize the vision and the dream and the
Hmm.
aspirations
Yeah.
that those of us in the profession who all of us, not those of us in the profession, all of us who want a better profession,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
They're the ones who are going to live our aspirational dreams. But
Right.
we have to do the work now, or they
Yes.
will be doing the work for their aspirational dreams for
That are
people
going
who
to
are
come
not
out
born
50
yet.
years after that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right. I mean, for me, it's super exciting. I know that you and I share that excitement, and I'm hopeful that for any athletic trainer that feels scared of these changes or is concerned about what it means for them, that there is an opportunity to evaluate where the opportunity is, as opposed to um, just focusing on the fear, I guess, that there is an understanding that, like, you have decision in this. There is choice. It's not simply something that is happening to you. And so I think that if we can embody that as individuals, that we really start to see things take shape in terms of action or understanding with all of the changes that are happening.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for this conversation is always so fun to have. And I feel like I understand things from a different perspective and on different levels after you and I have spoken about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love that we don't come into these conversations with really a plan. We have a loose
Yeah.
title, right?
Yeah.
I'm feeling really invigorated because honestly, this was not where I expected the conversation to go tonight.
Uh-huh. Right.
But it's so cool that it did
Right.
because it feels like it feels really like this change feels really exciting and
Yeah.
it feels almost limitless. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to continue have these conversations and the ability to share it on your platform,
Yeah.
so other people can listen and then hopefully engage in these conversations with their colleagues,
Yep.
or direct them to the video and continue these conversations, because this is where it all starts. It all starts
Exactly.
with us because we are the profession.
And that's what I was going to say is like, it's just so important that this isn't happening in a vacuum. You know, it's not just me and you having conversation on the phone, which is totally fine. But the hope or the point is that someone else watches this, or, you know, you and I even walk away from this and we go have further conversation, because this is where it starts. And we are the profession. We are NATA. We are athletic trainers. We are the present and the past and the future. So if each of us individually is not engaging in this way, we can't expect someone or something to do that for us.
Yeah, and to build off the NATA month, we are healthcare in action.
Yeah,
And part of action, I mean, conversation can be action, particularly at
absolutely.
this stage in the game.
Totally.
We have to continue those conversations. And I've got goosebumps now that, we just finished talking about it. And so I don't know if I'm going to go to sleep tonight. It's like going to be crystal, right?
Write everything down, all the things.
That's right.
Well, thank you as always for joining us. I know that people will continue to engage in this. It's always really cool to see the conversations that people include us in as a result of this. So I'm sure we'll be back next month.
Absolutely.